Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. If you've ever wondered how to implement features in your web app with AI, you're at the right place. I'm Sai. I'm a product manager at Builder, and Hunter and I will be walking you through today's session. Hunter, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, everyone, Hunter Gillespie. I'm a solutions engineer here at Builder, calling in from Greenville, South Carolina. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Nice. I do want to remind everyone, though, that this is an interactive session. Feel free to drop questions that you have in the Q&A tab. We have some room at the end of the session for a live Q&A session. We're also recording this event, so it'll be shared shortly after the event ends. I want to take a quick look at what we're going to be covering today. So first off, we're going to be looking at how to connect an existing GitHub repository, that is an existing code base, and make edits to it using AI that will then result in a pull request or a piece of code that devs can review and ship. As a part of these edits, we're going to be implementing a feature in Builder's own web app using just prompts, no code. We also have a Figma design that our designer has provided as a part of that feature. And we're going to be looking at how to import that Figma design into Builder and use it to build our feature. And at the very end, once we've prompted and Figma imported our way into something that works and looks good, we're going to be visually editing that output to just make sure the outcome is pixel perfect. Most of this live stream is going to be a demo, but I do want to take a few minutes to just walk you guys through what our product is and why it exists. I'm assuming that a lot of you here today are either product managers, designers, or developers. And most of you guys probably know that shipping features has three main phases. There's an ideation phase, there's a design phase, and there's a development phase. And all of these phases have so many interdependent workflows where there's so much that could go wrong. So you could end up in your design phase with unclear requirements, and you might have to go back to the product requirement phase. You might end up in your development phase and realize that your design doesn't quite align with your design system, and then you have to go back to the drawing board for your design. And in the end, all of these setbacks just derail momentum. And everyone is left frustrated with this. Like, I have heard so many PMs all over complaining about how their roadmap is overflowing. I complain constantly about how the backlog just never seems to end. Uh, Everyone hates red lines, and leadership just really wants to know why the big important feature that was supposed to be shipped today still hasn't shipped. And all of these mainly just impact your end users because they're left with a product that isn't the best that it could be. You have initiatives that move really slowly, you have deadlines that might be missed, and there's so many ideas that could really benefit your users that just never get built or tested because of a lack of time. At Builder, we really want to make shipping easy. We think everyone should be able to do it, and everyone should be able to do it quick. So we want marketers to be able to spin up and publish their own landing pages. We want designers to be able to tweak UI in the code base. We want product managers to be able to build out fully functional prototypes in their own web apps without needing a dev. And we want devs to be able to ship what's really important and not have to worry about 1,000 other tickets that come their way. To solve for this, we've built something we call Fusion. With Fusion, anyone can build features with simple prompts. And I'm sure you guys have heard this line quite a few times in the past few months. We have a lot of products in the market doing just that. But where Fusion really sets itself apart is the fact that you can build features in your existing web app in an environment that you're most comfortable with. So for devs, we have a CLI tool, we have a VS Code extension that you can hook up to your code base and then make edits to your code base with. And for non-devs, we have a Figma-like visual editor where you can, one, prompt your way to building out a feature in your existing web app, and two, use tools that you're familiar with from Figma, such as styling tools, layers tab, things like that, and refine the AI's output to get something you're really happy with. And once you've prompted and refined your way into something that you think can be shipped into your live web app, you can then send a pull request or a PR, which is a piece of code that your developers can then review. Even during the review process, we have our AI bot that can listen to what your devs want to make changes to and make those changes for you. And once that's all done, once your code has been reviewed, it actually gets shipped. So even though you have no experience with code and aren't writing code yourself, you're building something, you're creating code, and you're actually able to ship it in your own web app, which is something I've done a lot in Builder. I also want to take a second to look at where Fusion and Builder really sits in this landscape of very familiar logos. On the top left, we have GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, all amazing AI code editors. Fusion does not replace these AI code editors. In fact, our devs use Cursor and they use Fusion on top of Cursor when they're looking to solve more visually related tasks. So things like building out a UI from a Figma design is when they use Fusion on top of Cursor. And on the bottom right side, we have Bold, Lovable, Replit, amazing products that you can use to build net new apps. Even I've built my own personal portfolio using Lovable. Fusion's great at building net new apps too, but where it really sets itself apart is the fact that it can connect to your tech stack, your own existing code base, and build things with deep context around your code base and your design systems. You can build these things without actually needing to code. You can prompt and visually edit your way to build things. And Fusion sits really well in your existing enterprise workflows. So within Builder's web app, I have actually built out a lot of stuff that I've been creating tickets for, and those have just been sitting in the backlog. I've built out prototypes that ended up getting merged because our CEO liked them so much. And I've been encouraging a lot of other non-devs to use Fusion to build things within Builder. And Hunter is going to show you exactly how to do that now. Hunter, do you want to take over the screen share?
Yeah. Yeah, let's get into it. And I already see some great questions here in the chat here. One asking about, connecting to their design system with a private repo. And Hassan's asking about, well, is this only greenfield projects or, can I onboard existing repos? So we're going to cover that now. And we're going to kick things off here in the projects tab in Builder. And there's a few ways that you can interact with Fusion. So I could start by, pasting in a Figma design here or a prompt and create something net new, a new repository. If you're a developer and you prefer to, work locally, we have a VS Code extension that, matches this experience, but within your browser. Or I'm sorry, within your IDE. We're going to be working in our browser today, and working with our application, which I'll show you in a minute, but just to kind of step through connecting to your repository here. So we'll connect to a repo. I'll select Backstage just for the demo. Now we do need to do some basic config here, the setup scripts, running it, but assuming those are good, as this kind of onboarding wizard here is going to ask us if we use a custom design system. In this case, we'll say yes. And then something that is, pretty unique to Fusion here is we can have connect multiple repositories to a single Builder workspace. And this is important for those of you who have their design system or their component library in a separate repository, or maybe you want to link your storybook files, for example. This is how we would do that. And so we'll add a repository. In this case, we'll just use Chakra UI. However, now in this case, I'm already authorized with GitHub, but for Hassan, or sorry, the anonymous individual who asked about private dependencies, you can totally do that too. When you're authorizing GitHub, you just need to select which repos you want to authorize Fusion to view. So hopefully that answered the private repo questions. But yeah, so we've added that. And now, last but not least here is adding instructions. And so Fusion, being agentic, is able to study and learn from the instructions and all of the context that you provide here. So again, maybe that's storybook files. Maybe we want to paste in a path to those stories or the components. If you have any, design system documentation, or you want to tell it to have very strict adherence, really, the more context you can provide here, the better that output quality is going to be, in relation to your design system. And yes, Ant, Material UI, absolutely supported, Salil. Yeah, I think we got the questions. GitLab is the only one, Sai. I'll defer to you on that one.
Yes, we now support GitLab.
Fantastic. All right, so let's get into the demo itself. And we're actually going to be hopping between, a few different project instances today so that we can cover more ground while these prompts are running. But we're going to start out in our repository for Builder's headless CMS product. And this is, an example of us dog fooding or drinking our own champagne. This is our actual code repo. I'm logged in with my personal account. And, looking at this, you can see this is a large monolithic repo that we're working within. It's connected to our design system, backend, external dependencies, and is a good representation of kind of a brownfield app, that's been iterated on a lot over the years. So just wanted to call that out here. It's not, only basic apps that we can connect to. But as Sai mentioned, we're going to be making some changes to the pages, in this case, adding some features to the plugins page. And we have a Figma design that we're going to use kind of as an anchor for this. So we're going to hop over there. All right, and looking at this screen, these are the changes that we're going to be making. So we have a toggle for active plugins, advanced, a drop down here, a button for requesting a plugin, sorting, all this new functionality. And we could grab the entire page and paste it into Fusion. But if we're adhering to kind of general best practices for prompting, we want to break this up into chunks just to increase the fidelity of the output and ultimately reduce, the time spent doing manual tweaks at the end to kind of, get it just right. But we're going to start with the active toggle here. And we can use the Builder Figma plugin to do a smart export, which is essentially scooping up all of the raw data for this design. So we'll go ahead and copy that.
I like how you're breaking everything up. It's honestly how you would do it if you were coding it up yourself. You wouldn't code up everything in one big chunk. You would probably have 4 separate Jira subtasks to do 4 separate things.
Yeah. And sorry guys, I'm not great at talking while I'm typing here. And next, we're going to add instructions of where we want this. On the left-hand side of the page. When it's enabled, only.
I see a question about design tokens. Uh, if you have a design token file in your code base, uh, Fusion does look at your code base and use whatever context it has there. So those will be used. If you don't have a file and you just want to start using new design tokens, you can simply copy paste them into your prompt or add those in the custom instructions, and Fusion will use those for you.
Yeah. And we're going to hop back over to our Figma plugin here. So you can see at the end of that prompt, I told it to use the screenshot for placement context. And that's a prompting tip you're going to see me use throughout the lab today, is incorporating screenshots. I feel like screenshots are kind of an underutilized way to provide context to the AI because it can't really see, it doesn't have eyes. It is getting a ton of data from my code and the Figma design data. But in terms of the exact placement, that's where the the screenshot kind of moves the needle here. So I'm just going to Command Shift 4 take a screenshot of this plugin screen. We'll copy that and paste it in. All right, and we'll go ahead and fire that one off. Let me see the questions here. Okay. All right, and you can see it's reasoning now. The first thing Fusion's going to do on a net new branch is, scan our repo, understand how our design system is being used, dependencies, so that it can really mirror the structure and patterns that we're using in our code base. But while that's working, let's hop over to our next tab. And so this is another neat feature of Fusion, is that you can have as many instances of your app open as you want. And so each one of these tabs here is a completely fresh branch. Now, in this case, I'm focusing on specific parts of the app in each branch, but you could make changes in parallel with different ideas and kind of see what sticks, and ultimately submit a pull request for the one that you like the most. But in this branch in particular, you can see it's labeled exploratory features. This is for kind of less fleshed out, more experimental features that don't necessarily have a corresponding Figma design, but it's kind of more representative of the kind of prototyping that you would do with Builder within an existing app. So we're on our asset library page. And I know Saeed has used Fusion to do this too. You can ask Fusion for ways to improve your app. Whether your goal is, increased efficiency or improving the UI, Fusion will actually give you suggestions. So in this case, I asked for a prompt, that I could use to improve the file upload module, and it gave me this prompt. So I'll go ahead and paste this in here. And we're transforming it, making it larger, more user-friendly, and then it has a description of kind of what we want to be included there. And I'm going to throw a screenshot in as well. And Mark, I see your question about what LLM is Fusion using. So this is all Claude 4 as of today.
It is customizable though on enterprise plans.
Yeah, good
I did
call.
want to say, Hunter, like one thing you could have done better with this prompt is if you knew the exact code file, let's say, for what you're trying to change, you can actually just at the code file in the chat and give the AI a lot more context about where to make that change.
No, that's a great idea. I actually haven't used that. If this one
Yeah.
doesn't go as planned, we can revert and try that and see what the delta
Yeah.
is. Okay. And then last one here, we may come back and iterate on this. But just to break things up a bit, I have a product feedback app here as kind of an example of the kind of internal tooling that you could build out with Fusion. And this uses Builder's design tokens, but it's actually connected to Chakra UI. I was doing some experimenting there. So it's not one for one with Builder's design system, but it definitely looks familiar. But clicking around here, we have, on the roadmap tab, a Kanban board that's interactive. You can upvote, comment, ideas, you can submit them, but in its current state, it is pretty siloed. So we're going to add an integrations page and hopefully put together a working connection to our Slack sandbox. Let's go back to the home page here. All right, great. And here's actually a screenshot I ripped from another website.
That's a pretty broad prompt. I'm interested to see how it does with something that broad.
Yeah, we'll find out together.
Yeah.
All right.
More context is always better, but if you don't know exactly what you want, it does
Okay.
still do well with broad prompts.
And this is a pretty low stakes app to test with. It's not our actual tool, but speaking of that, let's flip back over to our tab here. Okay, it looks like it's still running its ESLint checks. I think this is worth calling out while we're waiting. So Fusion, by default, it's going to run its own tests at the end of these prompts. Runs lint after these code modifications. And part of it being agentic is it can run commands. It can do searches, basic bash commands that aren't going to break things. But that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah. Doing it all right now helps later on during the review process. That just becomes a lot faster when it's done all of these checks right here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks like it finished up here. We'll do a test. I don't want to. Let's work for a project that wasn't built with Builder.io. Yes, Josh, it will. This will plug into your existing GitHub repo. And you can see up here, if I click on these three dots, I can download code. So I always have access to that. It's not limited to, only working within, Fusion's ecosystem, if you will. And Mark, just to answer your question on the coding rule set, so yes, there's a builder rules file. There's also an agents file that's created when you connect your design system and get all the instructions there. And we covered that in the beginning. That'll be in the recording as well for you to see. But great, it looks like we have our toggle. Let's go ahead and see if it works. I'll turn on a couple plugins. And we'll turn on the active one. Okay, great.
Nice.
Looks like that's working.
I do want to point out this design has sat in our Figma workspace or whatever you call it for I think 6 or 7 months. And no one's been able to get to it because there's always some other customer request, support ticket, some other priority that's higher up than just changing up the UI of the page. So I love that we're just doing it. I think we can just send a PR and get it merged after this demo.
Yeah, we'll send a PR here at the end. But now let's move on to our next chunk. We're going to do the request integration and advanced configuration buttons up here. So we'll go ahead and select these with our Figma plugin.
Oh, I like how you're exporting like a bunch of buttons at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's been working pretty well for that. And I'm just going to paste a prompt in here just to save time. I'm not the fastest typer, but we can kind of walk through it together here. Um, Essentially what we're doing is moving the location, replacing some of the buttons, and then specifying how we want it to work. And we're going to actually use that same screenshot that we just used previously for all of these prompts.
I've seen this recommended in a bunch of other channels as well, but it helps to treat the AI like a junior dev. Like, I like how you're giving it a screenshot. You wouldn't just send a dev off on a quest to add a button without telling it where to place the button or how to place the button. So it does help to just talk to it like you would talk to a junior dev.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so we've got this one running. Okay, let's hop back over to our asset library. All right, this looks pretty good. This is, more or less what I imagined. Um, and yeah, let's while we're on the topic of exploratory features, we're going to build out something for Joe on the call here. So something else the marketing team has been wanting to do is a referral or a promotion for the Fusion launch, and that's something we'll add here. So for our prompt, we'll add a button.
This is the kind of BRD that takes a really long time to write up. and a really long time to get approval from stakeholders for. Like I've written a bunch of these kinds of requirement docs, all like listing out what I think should be done and what the benefits could be and what it might look like. But I think it's so helpful to have a working prototype of exactly what it looks like, what it does, how it's going to feel in users' hands. I think it's just way more powerful than a document with words.
Definitely. And this is a great tool for that, for product, for design, being able to mock things up. And, you know, I don't know if we'll show it today if we'll have time, but you can even, sync this two ways with Figma. So if you were to, let's say design this pop-up module, you wanted to bring it over to Figma, you could copy it here and just paste directly into that Figma plugin that we were looking at earlier. Add our screenshot. And we'll fire that off here. All right, going back to our feedback app, it looks like this prompt's done running. Let's see how our integrations page looks. Saeed, to your point, it was a pretty broad prompt. And this looks pretty good. Let's say this didn't look like we wanted it to, and there were some things just way off. So this is another differentiator for Fusion is that we have this, visual editor layer built in. So if I switch over to the design tab, let's say, this integrations label is too bold. We want to make it, not stand out as much, or maybe we want the text here to be centered, for example. I'm not a designer, guys.
Yeah. Looks
But
like you don't work with Figma that much,
I,
Hunter.
I don't. I'm not a front end designer by any means, but for those of you that are power users of Figma, I would imagine this is looks very familiar to you. Clicking on the layers, we're able to drill down and select each one of them. Switch without saving. But yeah, any of those changes that we make in the design tab are easily applied as code. It's just one additional click there. All right, so next for this feedback app itself. All right, so now we're going to do the back end work here, and this isn't super exciting visually, but it is necessary. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. This is another prompt that I had Fusion generate. I had it scan the Slack API documentation and write a multi-step prompt for getting the backend wired up. And we'll go ahead and send that and hop back to our original app.
That's pretty cool. I missed something. Sorry. Where do you say you got the prompt from?
From Fusion. Yeah, I had to do a search of Slack
Oh,
API
wow.
documentation and say, hey, give me the steps I would need for a basic, webhook integration.
That's one.
Marcelo, yes, on the MCP tools. So give the accessibility guidelines. Yeah, so for both of your questions, Marcelo, so the accessibility guidelines, I mean, I've worked with customers that have separate libraries just for the ARIA accessibility. So you could specify that. You could add that to the custom instructions. There's definitely some flexibility there. And then, yes, we do also have MCP integrations as well.
I will say, I think Marcelo mentioned, is it getting all accessibility guidelines from Chakra UI? I think that was just an example that you were showing. We are
Correct.
not at
Yeah.
Chakra UI right now.
Yeah, that's just what I'm using for that app in particular, just for kind of the demo here. And I don't really have any instructions specifically on accessibility. So if you see anything there that doesn't look accessible, it's not because of Fusion. It's just because I didn't set up design instructions there.
I say we also have a couple of questions about Bitbucket integrations and Azure integrations. That is something the team is working on right now. It's currently not available, but we're looking to make it available at some point.
All right, I guess while this is running its last scripts, we'll check out okay, great. Our refer a friend feature here. Okay, well, this is definitely where we would want to make some changes. I'm trying to think of how to describe this. Again, guys, I'm not a front-end designer, but we definitely,
Maybe you can ask it to make the modal look more like all the other modals in our
yeah.
web app, something like that. What could help actually here, rather than just prompting, what you can do, Hunter, is go into the design tab, or sorry,
Mhm.
go select, bring up the modal first,
Mhm.
and now go into the design tab. You should be able to select the modal. Yeah,
There we go.
select like the overarching layer.
Yeah,
And that just gives the AI a lot more context about what it is that it needs to change.
that's a good idea. We'll just change this to send. Okay, we'll try
I
that.
don't know if
That
it's gonna
looks.
save transparent though.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. It should be pretty quick.
We had a prompt in the chat that we could have used. Make the refer a friend accessible according to WCAG 2.2a. Maybe we can try
Oh,
that.
I've been looking at the questions. I totally missed the chat.
Yeah.
That was a good one, Marcella. Let's see if this works. We can revert back and try that. Yeah, let's try that. And we can always revert back, similar to other tools you've used, but just to call that out here.
There's a pretty cool question in the Q&A. Is this tool focused more on improving the developer experience or enhancing the designer experience when shipping products? Hunter, do you want to maybe answer that?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, for both really. And we can talk about this, more in detail later, but in terms of the workflows and how end users actually use Builder, it kind of depends on the organization, who's using it, where the bottlenecks are in your org. Certainly developers, when we're talking about the, very simple flow of, getting a ticket, the requirements for the feature, and then coding it up, sending the pull request. Absolutely. Fusion can shorten the time it takes to get that PR sent out. But when it comes to, the designer end users, let's say your process has a design review or a red line built into that before a PR can actually be shipped and merged. Um, a lot of times your designs in Figma are going to have a bunch of nuanced attributes in terms of interactivity, their states, responsiveness, things along those lines that don't always come through clearly to the devs. And the red lines, the back and forth can be time consuming process to say the least. So with Fusion, the designer can be invited to collaborate directly on that branch that the devs have been working on and just come in here and make any of those last mile tweaks themselves. Again, the design tab, very Figma-like in terms of the UI, don't have to do any coding, and it, greatly reduces the time it takes for that design review process.
If you want examples of how we use Fusion within our own organization, our devs often use Fusion when it comes to any tasks related to Figma. Anything front-end dev, they're going into Figma, pulling that stuff into Fusion, and then just creating their PRs. And when it comes to non-devs or designers, they have, at least for now, been going in, again, anything small, they've been, instead of creating a Figma design, creating a ticket that then goes to a dev, they're just going into Fusion and making that change themselves. It's been pretty cool to see all of our non-devs making changes.
Yeah. And it looks like this one's done, Sai, our second plugins prompt.
Nice.
So I guess before we go back over to the refer a friend, let's we'll add our last button, which was the sort button, and that doesn't exist today, but our amount of plugins has been growing pretty quick, so that'll help this page be more easily indexed. So let's go ahead and grab those details from the Figma plugin here. Let's paste that in. And then, looking at the prompt here, you can see there's a lot of natural language regarding where I want this button to be. Again, with the theme of the AI can't really see. So I like to be as specific as possible here, especially when, there is an exact spot that we wanted on the page. And then back to that screenshot we took earlier. Let's go ahead and paste that in here. All right, let's see the details. Kind of glad this happened. This is our first error so far. So another usability tip for Fusion and something that's pretty cool. Fusion's is self-healing in the sense that, if we click attempt to fix here, it will automatically capture those errors as well as, any others that are in the current state of the DOM or the network and have it generate a solution for us, which is pretty cool. But while it's trying to fix itself there, let's see. Okay. Let's hop back over to, here we go, our feedback app. And so it looks like our backend is wired up, our connection to Slack. Now all that's left is adding a setup wizard. Right now this is blocked off.
While you're doing that, I do want to answer a couple of pretty cool questions. There's one question that asks, do the devs worry that the non-devs are making breaking changes? In our experience, no, because we're not enabling anyone to merge changes without there being a review. With Fusion, although designers and non-devs have the ability to create stuff, they can't directly merge it without a developer's approval. They will send a PR, which then has to be reviewed by a dev before it can be merged. So in my experience, we haven't had anyone really worrying about breaking changes being made. There's also a question that asks, the designers are making changes in Fusion and then submitting a PR for the code changes underneath, or just making the visual changes and letting the devs handle agentic coding part. It's the first option. The designers are currently making changes in Fusion and then submitting a PR for the code changes that are made by the AI underneath the hood.
Yeah, good questions. All right.
We also have a question asking us about what frameworks we support. Right now, we support React, Svelte, Angular, and Vue.
Looks like it's down a rabbit hole a little bit here.
Yeah. This
Anyway,
is something I've faced with, I think, almost every single AI product that I've used, though. I think it is a limitation that we see all across the board. Sometimes the AI just gets to a point and gets in its head and just can't figure out how to solve something. So at that point, I think the best thing to do is just restore to a point where it used to work and then try again.
yeah. And actually, we can just go back to this prompt and try this again and see if we get the output that we want. Um, yeah, let's try that. Okay, and I think this should be done. Okay, it's still doing its linting, making sure everything's good. Um, I'm looking at the questions here. Michelle, yes, if you want to copy into Fusion from Figma, there's a builder plugin that you can install and use.
There's another question that says, does this support multiple natural languages for prompting? Yes, it does. You don't necessarily need to be using English. I think Hunter's using English because I don't know if Hunter knows how to use anything else, but
No,
you can definitely use whatever language you're comfortable in to prompt the AI.
yeah, that's a great question. All right, so looking at our plugins page, so we click our advanced drop down, we have what we want here, the sort by. Looks like this works, our active plugins toggle. So I mean, at this point, we can send a pull request, and looking at the time, I think it's a good time to go ahead and do that. So, right. So let's go ahead and send this. Okay. And the whole time that we've been prompting, iterating, so Builder has been making commits in the background so that, we have our finished page, we send our pull request, that happens, automatically. Everything's compiled here. And this will open up GitHub, our pull request. And we do have the Builder bot available to us within the pull request here. Right now it's generating a summary for this PR of all of the changes that we've made. And to the question earlier of, are you worried about non-technical users breaking our code? This is kind of what prevents that is your existing, pull request review merge process is still going to be intact. This doesn't bypass anything. So, all of the checks, requirements for merge that you may have in place, those are going to stay that way. And we can see the diff here. And yeah, we can actually tag BuilderBot as well in these files. I don't know if this one's a great example of that, but we could just add a comment here and say at BuilderBot. Add more verbose commenting or something like that. And whatever we talk to it, whatever we ask it to do, it's going to add that to the main PR, which you'll see when we go back here. But yeah, review required, merging is blocked. So yeah, that would prevent me, who's on the sales team, from trying to merge my new feature that we created here today. All right, and okay, so this looks better. Hmm. Anyway, all right, so this seems to have worked. Our Slack setup here, and hopefully we can actually test this out. All right, good. So when we click the connect button, we have this pop-up here. The app is already pre-named. And next we are going to configure our OAuth information. Paste in our client ID. These secrets fields should be in password input format. Okay, good. Okay, so that's something we'll want to change as well here, but let's go ahead and copy our, well, let's put in our webhook URL first. And so this is just where I want that product feedback idea to be sent to our feedback channel. We'll grab our redirect URL and we'll paste it up here. There's my bot token. And if we send a test message, this should come through. Okay, it did not. Okay, I've seen this one a couple of times. I might have had a trailing space or something. But anyway, let's make this look how we want it. So there were a couple things in particular that I didn't love about the setup wizard. We have an overlap here of the close button over the step that we're on, and then also the redirect URL is overflowing out of our container. So let's go ahead and fix that. We'll run that and then come back and step through that again. Okay, so do you see any other, I guess I can look. It looks like we're airing out here. It seems to be stuck down the rabbit hole a bit, but this definitely looks better. This is more along the lines of what I had imagined. So yeah, this would be a good candidate to paste over into Figma as a starting point for designers to work on now that we have this as kind of a proof of concept. Um, but yeah, if we do have about 10 minutes here, I want to make sure we have time to get to questions. Let me check the chat.
Uh, there's one question that asks why they can't see the projects option in their sandbox environments. I'm You have to be on a Fusion space in order to see the projects option. We have two space types. It is a little confusing, but if you are not on a Fusion space type, you won't be able to see the projects option.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sai. I wonder if Virat's in a published space. And hey, Joe, I see your question here on Fusion and Publish integrating with each other. So that's the vision. Right now, they're separate products as they are today. There is some synergy there. You know, you could use Fusion to build out your component library that you want to have available within the headless CMS product. Um, but it is just because they're integrated at different layers, we don't have like a drag and drop capability the same in, drag and drop to then click publish the same way it works in the headless CMS tool. But yeah, there definitely are ways that they can benefit each other.
There's one question about uh, is there a conversation mode wherein the AI doesn't make changes? You can ask the AI any questions you want and it will just respond. You can specify, can you tell me about XYZ? Please don't make any changes, and it will just give you a response. I've personally used this a lot because one of the questions I have a lot is, do we have tracking on a particular portion of the web app? And we use Amplitude to track our user events. And I could either go in, perform all those actions myself, go into the network tab, figure out what events are being fired, or I could just ask Fusion, on this page, what events are being fired. And it will just tell me everything that I need to know.
Yeah. And you can ask it questions too. And if it's a short enough question, a lot of times it'll say no credits were used. If it's giving you a little tidbit. So yeah, uh, I think that's more of just a way and how you talk to it is the kind of output that you're going to get back. But um, yeah, to Saeed's point, you probably want to specify if it's unclear, do you want it to make a change or not, that you don't want it to make changes. At least that's what I typically do. Um, in Lynn, so your question, does everything need to be an auto layout in Figma to work properly? So auto layout is always going to help when it comes to responsiveness, but no, it's not required. The smart export is essentially just grabbing all of the data there just as a blob. So whether you have auto layer or not, it's going to use everything there and kind of give it its best shot. Let's okay, good. That looks better. And yeah, there we go. So it did make those changes. Um, you know, test message didn't go through, unfortunately, but it looks pretty good. And that's definitely a good starting point for 3 prompts for sure. Check the chat here. So it looks like it's rabbit holed itself, unfortunately, on this refer a friend module. Anyway, let me pull up the questions tab here.
There is a question about, I think, Hunter, you might be best equipped to answer this. But let's say you spend a week putting together all of a project, it's good to go. Is there consistency within the project between all of its parts? So, for example, do TypeScript types get duplicated? Is code reused or repeated, etc.? Is it following best code practices essentially?
Yeah, that's a great call out. So how Fusion works is it is going to use your code first and foremost as kind of its um, what it's going to try to mirror in terms of the code it outputs. So how your uh, code is structured here, all of the components that you're using, your design system, it's going to really imitate how your developers code and write code. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question a bit. But if you do have very specific requirements of how you want that code to look or a specific format, I would recommend using the custom instructions there. And so I don't see where that question is. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything there.
No,
Oh
it's
no.
up top. It's a little further along. I do want to
Okay.
say though
Credits.
that like
Yeah, go ahead.
our builder employees use Fusion all the time, and it's written some pretty good code. Almost all of my PRs have been accepted or merged. The ones that haven't been merged are usually because the idea gets shot down and not because the code is bad.
But yeah, was this Mark's question, Saeed, about reusing components?
No, it's an anonymous attendee. I think Mark also has a question about that though.
Okay. So yeah, Mark, absolutely. That is a great call out there. So your atoms, molecules, organisms, and Figma, everything that's in your design system, feed that to Fusion, throw that all in there because it's going to learn from that, study from that, and output that way. And this is particularly useful for, builders, customers that do have, very mature, strictly adhered to design systems. They want to use their component library. They don't want the soup of divs and HTML. They want it to use their system's components. Um, So yes, absolutely, this is effective, and it's really just the design instructions and connecting those, whether it's your storybook, an external design system, design tokens from Figma, all of that's going to help. So it looks like we've got about 2 minutes here. Saeed, anything we want to wrap up with?
No, I think we're good.
Hassan, just to answer your question, the broad prompt that covers multiple features, no, Builder's not going to. Well, actually, I don't know, Saeed, do you know if it's going to break it up into small commits or just do it in one? I would imagine it would be in one.
In fact, I think it's going to be multiple commits. If you go to your if you go to your pull request that you just created
Mhm.
for the plugins page, you see like 22 commits there. So I'm going to imagine it
Okay.
splits it
That
up into a
answers
bunch
our,
of different
that answers
commits.
the question as it is split up because we definitely didn't have 22 prompts.
Yeah.
But yeah, good question, Hassan.
Also, I see Leonardo has some trouble with sending a PR. If you are having trouble at any point in Fusion, we do have like a bunch of places where you can give us feedback, and we are constantly monitoring that feedback. So if we get feedback from you, you will likely get some kind of a response from us.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, we're at time, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.